Hi everybody out there, I'm Tom from Patchwerks, and I'm really excited to be showing this Waldorf M to you today. But first of all, let's just take a quick listen, huh? So really beautiful sounding synthesizer. The reason I wanted to really dive into this myself is that it has a lineage from one of my favorite synthesizers ever, which is the PPG Wave. And you may know that Waldorf started carrying the torch from the old PPG company. That was one of the first digital analog hybrid synthesizers, the PPG was. And a lot of the sound is carried over in some of Waldorf's products like the Microwave 1, 2, and XT, as well as their current products like Quantum and Iridium. So M came along. You can see it here in this beautiful blue anodized cabinet. And just before we came on, Matthew was asking me, well, what's different about the M compared to Waldorf's other flagship synthesizers like Iridium and Quantum? The big difference is that M here is really focused on wavetable. And this one does not have a touchscreen like Iridium and Quantum do. And a lot of the functionality that Quantum's oscillators have has been reduced. So these are just wavetables, whereas on Quantum and Iridium you get your kernel, your basic wave shapes, resonator, and so forth. So before diving too much into the features and specs and anything, let me just play some of the stock sounds, which I've just had a lot of fun playing. And by the way, this is like my first hour or so into the M, so forgive me if I make any mistakes or don't know everything about it yet, because I certainly don't. All right, so here we've got KA Blue 2.3, so an homage to the PPG Wave 2.3. Go to the next one. So the way you switch your sounds in M here is this knob, and you kind of just scroll around. It's probably hard for you to see, but the name of the patch is changing right here when I'm pointing, and we're going to go into space waves here. As Matthew said, so M is multi-timbral, and this white LED here indicates that it's in multi-mode. For some reason, every sound I load comes up in multi-mode, so I'm just going to turn that off like this, so we can just hear the basic patches on their own. This one is called Space Waves. So that sound right there has the PPG wavetables in it, and it also has the presence to me of the old PPG sound. Those wavetables have been used all over the place. Like I said, in Waldorf's Microwave, they're in the Quantum and Iridium, and a lot of other places too. However, one of the great things about the original PPG is just the presence of sound that it has. You can load up the the PPG 2 or 3.V plugin or any of those other digital synths, and they just don't sound as present as the PPG did to my ears. However, I will say this Waldorf M is about the closest that I've ever heard. It sounds really good. And the PPG itself has this really subtle growl to it, even in kind of quieter patches. So you can also hear me there actuating the voltage control filter here. So this is an Analogue VCF that they've got in Waldorf M, and it's based on a new chip that was designed by Dave Rossum, and he actually designed the original chip that was in the PPG Wave 2.3, I believe. You can fact check me on that. But this is the new modern version of that same chip. So in addition to its digital wavetable oscillators, we'll get into those in a sec, it's Analogue VCF. It also has an analog stereo VCA. So after the oscillators, all the signal path is analog on this thing, and that's just like the original PPG. Let's pull up a couple more sounds here. Let's see which ones. I think I remember this one being cool. So this is just an analog string kind of sound. All right, let's go for another one. Let's see here. Forget which all of these I liked. We'll just pick one. Blade Runner. So that one's kind of wild. Why don't we talk a little bit about the interface of the M, and I thought it would also be fun to try to make a patch from scratch, and that way we can really dive into the features and the workflow and all that. And again, you know, with my expertise level on this guy so far, I'm really just scratching the surface. So up here, these buttons control the UI. So you can see the screen changing as I press each of these buttons, and they correspond to an area of the synth. As far as the synth architecture goes, you get two wavetable oscillators, that's these two sections here. You get your mixer that also has noise and ring mod, which is pretty cool. And then those go into your voltage control filter, and then to the voltage control amplifier, the VCA on the output. And by the way, since this is a stereo VCA, you can also introduce panning with modulation, so that's pretty cool. There's a glide function here, arpeggio here, and along the bottom you've got your modulation sources. So we've got two LFOs that have multiple different wave shapes. We can look at those here. You can see the sign. This is the shape button, so you can see that shape changing. It's a stepped function there, so pretty cool. A lot of different shapes. And then you've got your envelopes. So this section here uses 8 knobs to control what I think are, let's see, 1, 2, 4 envelopes. There may be more. This select button, you can see the white LED cycling through the different envelopes. The most basic are down here at the bottom. You've got your ADSR for the filter and your ADSR for the VCA. So, right, I just turned the release all the way off. And then if I want the attack to increase, if I go into the envelope UI mode, by the way, you can see the screen changing the shape of the envelope as I adjust it. And then it may be hard to read, but right here it's telling me this is where note off happens on the envelope. So there are a lot of little hints like that in the UI on M that really help you when you're sound designing. All right, but let's go ahead and call up an init patch. So I do that by holding down Shift and hitting recall. Did it work? Right, so now we've just got a basic sound. I'm going to turn all of the mix down, all of the elements of mix, so we should hear nothing. Okay, great. And then what I'll do is turn up just the first wavetable oscillator. And then I'll go over to wave here so we can see what we're doing. And by the way, in each of these functions, there is another knob here that you can use to page through the different functions on that area. So we'll just keep it here on wave. And what this section here I'm pointing to says, it says resonant, wave 0, and I think pH1. So that's just the wavetable it's telling me, and its position within the wavetable. And right now you're just hearing one wave, but with this knob, this red one, and this is actually 2 knobs concentric in one. There's a red top and then a black ring to the knob. The red knob will change the wave. So that's changing the wave within that wavetable as I move my fingers or move the knob. And by the way, there are a lot of modulation sources for that. We'll get into that in a sec. The outer ring changes the wavetable, like I said, so we can just flip through some of those. And each wavetable is going to have a different characteristic based on, what waves are comprised in that table. And if you're not familiar, I've been using this word wavetable quite a lot in this intro so far. You can think of a wavetable oscillator as a simple single cycle waveform oscillator that you can change the wave using parts of your synthesizer. And the different waves, you can imagine these different shapes, wave shapes, strung together one after the other. That's the table, okay? Okay, so other things you can do on your oscillator here, you've got your octave switch, and you've got your semitone pitch. And then there's obviously detune as well. This one here is an envelope amount, so you can map an envelope. Let's go into some waveform. So I just explained the first wavetable oscillator. Second one's exactly the same. But why don't we introduce the wave envelope here? So that's the default envelope amount. So you can already hear the action, the motion in the wavetable introduced by this envelope, right? Here's 0, and here's positive. Cool. All right, so let's introduce the second wavetable oscillator. And I'll go some semitones up. I'll go up to 7 semitones to get a cool sound. So that's pretty cool. Let's move on to the filter. So, basic cutoff is going to be your most exciting feature here. And we've already looked at that before. But I will say, these analog filter chips, the SSI 2044, which is in here, 8 of them, 1 for each voice. The resonance really sounds great. And you may have heard in some of those other patches, if you're listening at headphones, the bass can be really full and rich, which is awesome. Let's go to a bass register here. If you like your filters self-resonating, you got it. This one does that. And you'll see that I'm only about maybe a little bit past halfway up on this resonance. You can really hear that peak in the resonance. And then the other controls you get for your filter right at the front are envelope amount. That's going to be your envelope filter. You get keyboard tracking and velocity. So that's all pretty cool right from the front panel. One thing that I like to do on wavetables is modulate them with an LFO. So let's figure out how to do that. I'm going to go into my my wave menu here, and I'm going to go move this sound parameter selector over. And if you can see here, it says mod 1 source LFO1. So LFO1 is defaulted to pitch as well. So I'm going to choose, LFO2 here. And this mod control, it allows you to introduce the amount of that LFO using another controller. So typically, I guess by default it was set up to mod wheel. I'll just take through a few features now that I'm lost in sound design here. But this thing is really capable. So I mentioned at the top, it's 8 voices, and it's 4-part multi-timbral. So that's pretty cool. It means you can have 4 different sounds playing up at the same time, 4 different sounds at once on one unit. It does also have 4 individual stereo outputs, which is great if you want to record all of those at once into your DAW, or maybe you want to mix them differently in a live situation. So a lot of sound design there. It can sync its LFOs to MIDI, so that's pretty cool. And it does have an arpeggiator, like I said. One of the cool things that this has compared to the earlier Waldorf microwaves, one is you can choose the mode of each of these wavetable oscillators. The Microwave 1 used 8-bit waves and was really crunchy, so some people like that. The Microwave 2, I believe, used 16-bit waves. So it sounded smoother, but you can choose on this which one you want. So that's pretty cool. The other thing that this has that the others didn't is oscillator sync. This is a true oscillator sync. And in case you're not familiar with that concept, you will, if the oscillators are different pitches, the second oscillator can reset whenever the first oscillator is done with its cycle. Kind of hard to understand, but let's just hear how that sounds. I'm going to reset. Nope. Let's see. Cancel. So those are our two oscillators. I'm going to turn on sync. They're at the same pitch, but listen to how it changes as I change the second oscillator's pitch. So that hard sync, to me, you can kind of hear the second pitch coming through. I haven't explored it deeply yet, but you know, that's the whole deal with sync. I may have actually gotten it wrong. So I did want to show you in the mixer. So if we go in the mix here, you can see the two levels of each wavetable oscillator here, as well as the noise, which will come up. Actually, I didn't even play the noise. You want to listen to the noise? There it is. Great noise. But what you can see here in this line, it says overdrive. So each of these parts, when you're mixing up, if you don't want to clip it all, you just don't exceed that line. But if you do, so you do want to overdrive one of the two wavetables, you can. You just exceed overdrive. So you can actually hear some of that soft clipping in there. Pretty cool. Okay, let's listen to another sound or two, and then we'll wrap it up. Let's see, this one says chilling vibes. That's chilling, all right. Let's try another one. We got Blade Runner. Space Gong, that one sounds pretty good. That one sounds promising. That's a Space Gong, all right. Let's see, one more. This one says Vox Humana. So if you're a fan of Tangerine Dream or maybe Depeche Mode, Gary Newman, that sound is probably going to be familiar to you because each of those acts were using the PPG. So I'm going to wrap it up here. I'm a real big fan of this Waldorf M, which I just started learning today. It's pretty intuitive to use. I may have misspoken a few things here and there, but it's easy to call up sounds and edit sounds and also start from scratch. And again, to me, the sound is just awesome. So that's it. Oh, by the way, in stock at Patchwerks, we do have them. This very unit's going to go downstairs. If you're in the Seattle area and want to drop by and check it out in person, please do. Otherwise, we're available online. All right, that's it for me, everybody. I'm going to hand it back to Matthew, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Thanks.